So today, as the title suggests, I'm going to explain why, for me, practical effects will always be better than CGI. Now, I'm not saying movies with CGI can't have the same emotional or psychological impact of practical effects, as the story could be so good, it brings the movie to life for the viewer. I'm also not talking about green screen for the most part, as having a sci-fi horror fantasy movie, you would have to use it for forced perspective, a background, whether it be a matte painting, CGI or practical. Though, like CGI, it is also overused, but I won't be talking about that today. Just look at the Star Wars prequels, they couldn't even make Padme a seat, you know. And I'm not having a go at the CGI artists. I'm not insulting them or, degrading their work in any way. That's not what this video is. I'm just saying that for me, yeah, CGI, no. So anyway, let's begin with a few examples of what I mean. And yes, once again, I'm reading from the good old trusty script, which will probably still be questionable. Anyway, so the examples. Here we have Nosferatu from 1922 versus Mobius 2022. 100 years apart. And which one looks better? More, well, that would be the 100-year-old movie. Yes. Then we have The Mummy 1959 versus The Mummy 1999. And I am a big fan of The Mummy 1999, and not just because of Rachel Weisz. Though, let's be honest, it really didn't hurt the movie, did it? And once again, the movie that is 40 plus years old looks better with the practical effect. Jaws 1975 versus The Meg 2018. And this isn't even a contest. Jaws wins hands down. Then we have Legend 1986, The Dark Lord versus Thanos. Yes. So, two movies also almost 40 years apart, and the old 1986 one looks 100 times better than the big purple grape. It's not even close. Then we have Hulk 1977 versus Hulk 2007 and onwards. Yes. So, once again, decades apart, and the Hulk, the original 1977, looks better than CGI Hulk. In fact, I would go as far as to state that the original Lou Ferrigno Hulk is the best on-screen adaptation of Hulk there has ever been, because he was real. When he threw stuff over, that's him actually throwing stuff over, whereas, well, when it comes to the other Hulks, they're all just bleh. And it's not, alright, yes, I'm sorry. Sometimes I get ahead of the script because I'll ramble a little bit and then I have to go back, and then I've already said in some way what I've written down, but I'll have to say it again because then I'll lose my place. Now, there are decades between these movies, and in every case the practical effects easily trumps the CGI characters. And it's not just the characters, the backgrounds and sets have also become mostly CGI in big budget Hollywood movies. So why is it that the movie industry uses an extreme amount of CG? Well, the main reason I've heard from people, what they have seen in videos on YouTube and articles, etc., the main reason they give is that practical effects cost too much. And I'm going to debunk this claim. Jaws was made in 1975 for a budget of 12 million, adjusted for inflation to today's money, and that would be 66.4 million. The Meg cost 178 million to make, and it affects didn't look anywhere as good. 1987's RoboCop cost $13 million. Again, adjusted for inflation, that would be in today's money a $34 million budget. Iron Man cost $186 million. 1986's Aliens budget was $17 million. In today's money, that would be $46 million for the budget, while Avatar cost $237 million. But we're not just going to go there. We're not just going to adjust for inflation. But once we have adjusted for inflation, the practical effects movies use less money. But to be extremely fair as I can here, let's just add $50 million to all the budgets. Why not? Just for fun, for like governmental red tape, environmental policies, etc. Let's add $50 million to those old movies' budgets adjusted for inflation. That would mean that Jaws, from its 66.4, which was adjusted for inflation in today's money, put 50 on that, and you have almost 120 million. Still almost 60 million less than the Meg. RoboCop, add 50 million to it, and that's $84 million budget in today's money, and it's still over $100 million less than Iron Man. And Aliens, add 50 million to it, around 100, so you've still 137 million less than Avatar. So even throwing an extra 50 mil onto the top of the budgets adjusted for inflation to today's money, and all these practical movies are still cheaper to make than today's CGI movies. But let's go further. We have the modern low-budget B movies and independent movies with good practical effects, like The Void in 2086. The cost of all the effects and stuff, 82,000. Yes, not million, thousand. Harbinger Down 2015, 384,000. Psycho Gorman, a lovely, great little. I don't know if you'd call it maybe an independent B movie, but it's a great little movie that I would recommend to everybody if you haven't actually seen it, with good practical effects, and that was made in 2020 for around $50,000. Yeah, I take me drink, so now those are movies that were made on a fraction. Literally a fraction of Hollywood's budget. But let's go even one step further. There are dozens of companies out there that offer good practical effects at low cost. This is mainly for the B movie and independent and stuff. And you could even, if you were just like me, a random person, and you wanted to take your camcorder, go outside and make a movie, you could even do that for getting some practical effects off Amazon, which, injuries and stuff, throw a bit of Vaseline or KY, bit of fake blood to make it glisten so it looks real, and there you go. So you can even do practical effects on a shoestring budget today. Then take into account all the TV shows from the 50s, 60s onwards, which have much smaller budgets than any Hollywood movie. Star Trek, Buck Rogers, Babylon 5, etc., etc. All use heavy practical effects. Yes, please. So, I think I've shown here that money isn't the issue. I mean, even adjusting for the budgets and throwing money on top of that, the B movies that are being made today with great practical effects. I'm not saying the movies themselves are great. Some of the B movies could have terrible stories, terrible acting, terrible CGI, and then have just a couple of scenes of good practical effects. But the good practical effects are in there. I'm just so yeah. The amount of companies that are doing practical effects now, and even some stuff you can buy off Amazon, and the TV shows and stuff. So when you take all of that into account, it really, anybody who says that, you know, they couldn't do it because of money, that's simply false. You know, because how do you explain everything else then? I mean, they don't have a lot of money. How do they do it? And you're telling me $1 billion Hollywood company can't do practical? You know. Oh. So, now that I've shown that money isn't the issue, what is the issue? Why aren't they doing practical effects? And I have a few ideas on that. One, directors, creators and producers have no passion. You know, we've all seen Star Wars, Star Trek, Halo, She-Hulk, etc., etc., made by people with no passion for the property. They don't care about the canon or lore, and openly despise the fans. So they will make whatever they want to make in whatever the way they want to make it, which is usually just lazy, it'll do. You know? Second would be the studios are not run by film enthusiasts. I mean, it's like this. Ever since the start of Hollywood, you know, it was about making money. But for the most part, up until maybe the early 90s, maybe even the late 90s, you know, for basically the last 20-ish years, you know, we went from the studios being happy with making a good profit, and you know, they might make 5 movies, 4 be duds, but then that one movie pays for, that's successful, pays for all the rest in future projects. You know, so they were willing to take chances. Now they're not. You know, because they're not film enthusiasts. They don't care about movies. They're run by bankers, hedge fund managers and stuff. You know, corporate types who want to maximise profits as any way they can, meaning they don't care how the product gets to the screen as long as it gets to the screen. You know, and because it takes good time management skills to actually create a practical movie. You know, which is another reason why these corporate types who are now running Hollywood don't understand. You know, they think, what's the quickest way to make it? I know, we'll just film these little bits and we'll just fix everything else in a room filled with people behind computers. That makes no sense. No, I mean, all you have to do is sit down. Okay, we're going to start filming 1st of June. Let's start ordering the practical effects in April. That way they're ready for June. And there you go. It's simple. But again, because of all these corporate wankers who are currently running Hollywood, they don't care. Third, a number of new directors, etc., might not have the skill to do a practical movie. You know, oh, missing a page here. There we go. Sorry about that. Fourth is, and this is where money does come into it a little bit, actors cost too much. You know, when in many modern movies today, 1/3 of the budget could be going to the bloody actors. I mean, remember when Robert Downey Jr. wanted $50 million, you know, for I think it was Endgame or something, or maybe the one before. You know, they're all looking, so basically you're talking a good chunk of that money is going to overpaid actors. You know, so yeah, that's not good. And the last problem is that a large portion of modern audiences simply don't care. And this is not insulting anybody out there who doesn't care how, you know, about practical versus CGI, because the reality is most people aren't nerds. You know, they'll watch a movie or TV show and then go on about their day. That's as much interest as they have in it. As long as they enjoyed it, they don't care because they're not nerds. You know. So now that I've given maybe some reasons why they do it the way they do it today, why do I think the way I do? And this, it was harder to try and write down, you know, to get the words out the way I wanted to, and I still don't know if I've managed it or not, so stick with me here. Well, for the first thing, it could be a generational thing. I grew up with movies that were majoritively practical effects. You know, when you're born in the 70s, grew up in the 80s, you know, you're surrounded from practical effects from the old 1950s onwards, through the 70s and 80s. You know, everything was heavy practical effects, so maybe that's just the way I am. It's a generation. Maybe people born today prefer CGI movies, you know. It also might come down to how we consume media, or I consume media. Since I'm talking for myself here, I don't know, but maybe, yeah. You know, with books, when you're reading them, you're creating the pictures, the characters, the world, you know, all in your head, and that's how you get a connection to them. You know, a good story sparks the imagination, and with games, you know they're games. They're all going to be pixels, and you understand that going in. So you, from that viewpoint, even though it's a collection of pixels, you know it's pixels, and so it's a believable world, etc., etc. I don't know if I'm explaining that correctly, but yeah. But when it comes to movies, it's harder to explain. Practical effects and characters in movies it's a bit harder with movies, right? Because you've got real and CGI, and it's the melding of the two that is a problem. As I said, the practical effects, the characters, etc. Consciously, I know that when it comes to practical characters and sets, I can reach out and touch them. You know, which for me makes whatever I'm watching a lot more real. And that helps bring the universe I'm watching to life, if it's real. But with CGI, I know the CGI is fake, and so it's harder for me to connect with that movie or even TV show if it's not real. Like it's you could say that when it comes to suspension of disbelief, when it comes to movies, it does depend on how real, and this is going to sound very strange, how real I know the fake movie is, if you know what I mean. To give you an example of what I'm talking about, Lord of the Rings. I like Lord of the Rings, and I'm specifically talking about the first one, Fellowship of the Ring. And you can be impressed by the CGI Balrog, be engrossed in the story, etc., etc. But at the same time, feel no emotional or psychological impact from the Balrog itself. You know, it wasn't. When I was watching the scene of the Balrog versus Gandalf, the Balrog made absolutely no impact on me whatsoever. What drove me, what brought me emotionally to that scene was Gandalf. You know, his emotion at the time, you know, that by Ian McKellen, you know, that pulled me into that scene. Quite frankly, you could take the fucking Balrog out of it, and yeah. So while this Balrog was good CGI, it was still fake as everything, you know, and it was easy to tell it was fake. You know, but that is one thing about the Lord of the Rings trilogy. Peter Jackson, you know, did use a lot of practical effects and a lot of CG and blended them together. So it helped bridge that gap in a way in some scenes, but other scenes like the Balrog scene, it was just, wow, collection of pixels, how scary is that? You know, if you want an even better example of that, Hercules and Xena. Now, as you can see, I, I have Hercules and Xena, so I really enjoy the shows. But you can watch an episode of Hercules or Xena, and they have real sets. They have a practical, or usually it's a part of a practical monster. They'll have a practical monster, and it will bring you in. You're like, yeah, monster. And then it goes to this really, really terrible CGI on it. If you saw Hercules and Xena, you know what I'm talking about. Even from back then, it was bad. Which takes you out of it again. So it's a great example of practical versus CGI. But yeah. So yeah, I don't know if I explained that in a coherent fashion. I think I've done my best to try and explain, why the CGI doesn't affect me. Well, certain CGI, CGI in the background, you might never even notice it. You might even be able to tell it's CGI. Where they're blending a practical background into CGI background. That bit. You might even be able to tell that. But there are many, many times, especially in modern movies, where you can easily tell it's all fake. And that's my problem. At this point in time, I would happily go back to the 1980s with sometimes very questionable practical effects versus today's modern movies with the CGI equivalent of projectile vomit. I would happily go back to the 80s with all the stuff back then rather than today. Yeah, I think I've covered everything I wanted to say. So yeah, what are your thoughts on it? Do you completely disagree with me? Do you agree with me a little bit? Maybe a little bit more? Do you have your own take on the whole practical versus CGI effects? Maybe you don't mind the practical effects in some movies, but you don't like them in other movies. Let me know what you think of the practical versus CGI discussion, debate, war. And yeah, let me know in the comments below. And until next time, take care of yourselves, because this world's only getting stranger.